The night call made Sarah shudder. She had known for a long time that such calls were never good. Her husband worked as an investigator and was often called to work at night, and one day he didn't return after one of those calls. Seeing her son's number on the phone screen, Sarah's heart raced. "Connor, what's wrong? Is Molly sick again?" she asked in a trembling voice. "Yes, Mum, we're at the hospital. The seizure was such that I thought it was the end," replied Connor mutteringly. "Mum, can we stay with you for a while? I'm going to sell the car and the apartment. I don't have any other options." "Of course you can, but it would be too cramped for all of us at my place. And then, wait, did you contact the funds?" In response, her son said that there was no time at all, and in a few weeks the operation may be useless. Then Sarah, instantly assessing the situation, offered to sell her apartment, which, although small, but located in the city centre, and is worth more than her son's spacious apartment in the suburbs. Connor was silent for a few minutes, and then said that he agreed, and that in that case Sarah could move in with them. Sarah could not sleep half the night. The woman got up, put the kettle on, and sat down at the kitchen table thinking. She had always been proud of her son. After university, he found a good job, and the girls never deprived him of attention. She was worried that her son was getting married early, before he had had time to get on his feet, and she often persuaded Connor not to rush, but it did not help. Connor became thoughtful, often absent from home in the evenings, and sometimes did not come home until the next day. Sarah realized that her son had fallen in love, and most likely, seriously. "When will you introduce us?" she asked her son once. And literally the next day, Ruby appeared at their house, a thin, pale girl with bold grey eyes and a visibly rounded belly. Almost immediately, the young couple got married, marking the ceremony in the circle of the closest people. At first, they decided to live at Sarah's place. The good news was that the place allowed it. When Connor was not at home, Ruby permanently stayed in her room and did not communicate with Sarah. Once, her mother-in-law tried to improve relations with her daughter-in-law and asked Ruby to help her cook dinner. Ruby peeked into the kitchen and looked at the food arranged on the table. "Sorry, the kitchen is your territory. I don't want to interfere," she said, and disappeared back into her room. The relationship wasn't working out. Ruby did not cook by herself, only ate in the kitchen, leaving the dishes unwashed. Sarah tried to complain to Connor, but he defended his wife, explaining her behaviour by her shyness and pregnancy, and asked his mother to leave Ruby alone. Sarah understood that they could not all live peacefully together. The woman did not want to prevent Ruby from becoming the real lady of her own home, especially since they were soon expecting a baby. And then, determined to help her son live his own life, Sarah sold her house and bought 2 apartments. She moved into a small one, and the children got a large one on the outskirts of the city. Soon, Ruby gave birth to her daughter Molly, who was diagnosed with a serious heart defect a few years later. They needed an expensive, urgent surgery abroad, but the baby's condition was getting worse with each passing day, and there was almost no time left to raise money. Early in the morning, Sarah proceeded to sell her apartment, and in a week she finalized the deal. After giving her son the money, the woman called her friend Patricia, with whom she had been friends since high school, and asked to live with her until she found a rental apartment suitable at the financial level. Sarah was determined not to disturb her son and daughter-in-law, and she herself would feel safer that way. "Sorry, my dear, I would love to, but Tom and I decided to move in together," said Patricia regretfully. "Well, I'll manage somehow," replied Sarah. And then Patricia remembered about her summer house in the country She had not visited it for a long time, and she had planned to put it up for sale for a time, but she still had no time to do it. The house was old, but according to Patricia, it was possible to live there, and Sarah agreed with pleasure. She looked surprised out the window of a cab, which had stopped next to a half-decayed fence. Sarah thought she'd mixed up the address. The village house looked uninhabitable. The glass in one of the windows was broken, part of the roof was missing, and the front door was barely hanging on one hinge. Sarah entered the house and, sinking heavily into a ramshackle chair, cried for the first time in a long time. She understood it was her own decision not to live with her son's family and sell her only apartment, so she calmed down and immediately began to think about what to do. For a start, she needed to get the house in order and at least fix the roof. Stopping by the local store to buy groceries, Sarah asked the saleswoman if she knew anyone in the village who could help with the repair of the house. Tom, of course. He is the only handyman here in the whole village, eagerly informed the saleswoman. Here, he's coming. She waved her hand. Sarah saw the man's rapidly receding figure and, grabbing her purchases, ran out into the street. She called the man's name and he stopped. The man looked the same age as Sarah, and he stared at her while she embarrassedly told him about her problem. "I'll come by later today," he briefly said, and continued on his way. Sarah had no choice but to go home and wait. Tom showed up a couple of hours later, inspected the window, climbed on the roof, went into the shed, and silently hurried toward the exit. "So, what about the repairs?" Sarah tried to stop him. "Tomorrow. I need materials," replied Tom sullenly, and went out. Sarah was confused. She understood that she would have difficulty communicating with such a sombre and taciturn man, but she still hoped that he would manage to fix the roof before the rainy season and the first frosts that were inexorably coming. The next morning, Sarah was awakened by a loud noise overhead. After recovering from her fright, she realized it was Tom. The sound of the hammering did not cease until late in the evening, and then suddenly it all went quiet. Sarah went outside and saw that Tom had already left, and that there was not a single hole in the roof. The next day, Tom replaced the glass in the window and put the door back in place. A couple more days later, he repaired the fence and brought in some thick logs on a work truck. When Sarah came out of the house and saw Tom sawing logs for firewood, she even stopped to admire his work. "What makes you think I need firewood? What if I don't have any money, or I'm leaving soon?" questioned Sarah. "You haven't left yet, so you won't leave. And without firewood you will freeze to death in winter. This is not the city," said Tom calmly. "Don't worry about the money. I ordered the logs for myself, and these turned out to be extra." It started to rain, and the work had to be stopped. Tom left, but several days passed, and he never showed up. Sarah got worried and went to see Tom herself. Upon entering the house, she found him in bed with a high fever. The woman immediately bought medicine, made tea, and boiled chicken broth. Tom did not resist and accepted her help, not even being surprised by Sarah's appearance in his home. When Tom recovered, Sarah asked him how much she owed him for all his work. "We're even," answered Tom, and looked intently at Sarah. "Did you and your husband separate?" Sarah, suddenly, without knowing why, shared the story of her life with this strange, sullen man. He listened to her and also shared his painful experience. It turns out that he had known Patricia since childhood. He was in love with her and wanted to marry her, but she chose a city boy. "And why didn't you propose to her?" asked Sarah. "Didn't have time," replied Tom simply. And after saying goodbye, went off to his place. Sarah excitedly dialed Connor's number. She knew that Molly had a private operation and that they would soon return, but she really missed her grandmother. Hearing the girl's joyful and cheerful voice on the phone, Sarah could not hold back tears and cried. "Mom, don't cry. Everything's fine. We made it, and it's all thanks to you," Connor said with tenderness in his voice. A week passed, and her son's family was home again. Sarah was going to visit them and informed Tom about it. "Will you come back, or what?" he asked glumly. "I miss my family," Sarah said with a smile. "I'll hug my granddaughter and come back." At home, after seeing the little girl and making sure she was all right, Sarah began to backpack to the village. Connor tried to persuade his mother to stay, but she flatly refused, promising to come and take her granddaughter to her place for the summer. Sarah hurried home. She realized that she had already got used to the quiet and measured rural life and enjoyed it. Having bought some groceries on the way, the woman entered the house and was surprised to see that the house was well heated and there was a lush bouquet of autumn flowers on the table. She guessed that it was Tom's work. Hastily cooking dinner, Sarah invited him to visit, and he, though he tried to refuse at first, still came. Another month passed, and Patricia arrived to see Sarah. Seeing the transformation of the house, she immediately, excitedly announced that she could now sell it at a good price, since her boyfriend had finally made her an offer and they needed money. Seeing Sarah's frightened expression, Patricia hurried to comfort her, allowing her to live in the house until spring. But Sarah was not relieved. The quiet life was over, and she realized that if she moved in with her son, she would spoil relationships with Ruby, who had just started to get better. When Tom found out about Sarah's imminent leaving, he came to persuade her to stay. "Sarah, if you like it here, then stay here. My house is spacious and sturdy. I'll make a gazebo. We'll drink tea. You know how beautiful it is here in summer. And I won't feel well without you," he said, and as usual, stared intently into her eyes, waiting for an answer. "Are you proposing to me?" asked Sarah confusedly. "Yes, for the first time in my life." And Sarah stayed with Tom. She never thought that in her old age she would be able to find female happiness again. So it happens that trials and hardships in life are given to a person to turn into joy and happiness in the end.